Have you ever been outside? I haven't. Well, not until recently. When I first decided to start going outside a couple of years ago, the first thing to disturb me wasn't the giant ball of incandescent gas, nor the ungodly sounds of happy children playing. It was how big outside is. Growing up in rural Washington is an experience I can wholeheartedly recommend to anybody looking to do some early childhood development. But one of the downsides of living semi-isolated on a teensy-weensy little peninsula is that my sense of worldly scale was all out of whack as a kid. Like, what do you mean? What do you mean we just drove for 5 hours and we're only halfway to fucking Yakima? So I'm sure you can imagine the type of psychic damage inflicted upon lil ol' me when I decided to check out Tsutomu Nihei's Blom from the school library. The manga which dares to pose the ultimate question. What if inside was as big as outside? That's fucking stupid. Cut that out. Blom requires minimal introduction. Basically, every manga reader has heard of it, but I'm going to try anyways. Blom began serialization with the January 25th, 1997 issue of popular seinen magazine Monthly Afternoon, and saw its conclusion 6 years later in July of 2003. As a result of Blom's success in Monthly Afternoon, Nihei released the prequel miniseries Noise in 2000, which focused on clarifying some of the world-building stuff we didn't get to see in the original series. Nihei also published Blom and So On after the series' conclusion, a sort of parody collection art book thing, featuring segments like Megalomania, which showcase some of Nihei's other artworks, Blom Squared, a miniseries that takes place after the events of the main story, and Blom Academy, a spin-off featuring all your favorite Blom characters in high school. Yay, yippee! Since ending its original run, Blom has been met with nothing short of widespread acclaim, and is frequently mentioned as one of the greats whenever conversations drift to sci-fi manga, a sentiment I just so happen to agree with. Personally, I would go as far as to say that it's one of, if not the best science fiction works, period. It's at the very least on the same level as all the other classic sci-fi favorites like Dune and Blade Runner and Star Wars, which is crazy. That is a crazy thing for me to say no matter how you slice it. It's true, though. Easily the most recognizable aspect of Blom, and what I believe to be Nihei's greatest contribution to science fiction as a whole, is his borderline obsessive use of the megastructure as both a setting and narrative device. Callan, what's a megastructure? You say freakishly. To which I reply, hush little loaf child, for I was just getting to that. Japanese architect Fumihiko Maki defined the megastructure in his 1964 paper, Investigations in Collective Form, as, quote, a large frame in which all the functions of a city or part of one are housed. In a sense, it's a man-made feature of the landscape. He elaborates, the ideal is a kind of master form which can move into ever-new states of equilibrium, and yet maintain visual consistency and a sense of continuing order in the long run. So a megastructure can't just be large, it has to have the capacity to persist both in presence and concept over very long periods of time. Now, I don't know if Nihei has read anything by Fumihiko, but what I do know is that he understands this incredibly complex architectural concept on some kind of spiritual level. Like I said, Nihei is obsessed with using megastructures in his art, and pretty much all of his notable work, even outside of Blom, features a megastructure in one way or another. Biomega, Abara, Knights of Sidonia, Possums, even in Nihei's recent shift from sci-fi to fantasy in Tower Dungeon, he still dedicates entire pages to wordless landscape panels of these structures. It's basically his signature at this point. Though Nihei has an exceptionally unique art style and way of portraying his worlds, he wears his inspirations on his sleeve, which makes it really fun for nerds like me to point at his work and say, look, that's based off the Cenobites from Hellraiser. Like, damn bro, shut up, you're scaring the hoes. Nihei has gone on record saying that works like Akira and Ghost in the Shell serve as serious inspirations to his art, which is incredibly fair, although I think you'd be hard-pressed to find someone who hasn't been inspired by two of the best anime movies ever. H.R. Geiger, Clive Barker, and maybe Beksinski also serve a very clear inspiration, especially when it comes to the designs of the many entities and mechanical apparatus. But truly, I think it was Nihei's time in construction before becoming a mangaka that gifted him his understanding of the sacred geometry. You see it in all the minutiae of his environments, how he builds these colossal edifices highlighted by intricate texture and machinery. And in the case of Blom, age and decay add further detail to the already breathtaking environments. Both fans and critics like to joke about how Nihei's early work features these, genius level 9,000 IQ architectural drawings chock full of thought and effort, but his characters look like little potato people. Which is fair, but at the same time, I kinda like the potato people, okay? Yes, they're awkward, they're a little weird, but they're kinda cute also. And even more importantly, they do a good job of highlighting how uncomfortable these environments are meant to be. Blom is a post-apocalypse. Nothing about that is supposed to be clean or chic. It's a fight for survival, and I think these sketchy-looking early character designs help get that point across. But besides that, Nihei understands how humans build things, and how those man-made things interface with each other over long periods of time. Consequently, he knows how to twist man-made objects into something unsettling and alien, but jaw-dropping despite that. His art is profoundly disquieting, but with an air of realism that grounds you in the world he's portraying. Which, as it turns out, is the absolute best skill you could have when trying to tell a story like Blom. Blom is about Killy, your typical cybernetically enhanced drifter armed with his atypical gravitational beam emitter, as he wanders through the city, an out-of-control, perpetually expanding megastructure whose true size is never explicitly stated, although it's implied to be very, very large. Thousands of years before we joined the story, humanity developed the Netsphere, a hyper-advanced virtual reality system capable of transferring the consciousness out of someone's body and into the net, where people could do all sorts of shit, I don't know. But the important part is this. All the infrastructure used to control the city and its construction/safety is contained within the Netsphere, which could only be accessed by people with the net terminal gene, a genetic marker that confirmed the individual accessing the Netsphere was, in fact, human. Then one day, the net terminal gene disappeared. How? Why? Who gives a fuck? Tsutomu Nihei certainly doesn't seem to. The explanation we're given in the main series states that some sort of pathogen caused the net terminal gene to disappear, but it typically doesn't elaborate beyond that point. Noise goes a bit deeper into the origins of the disaster, but as per usual, it's left intentionally vague, preferring to take the show-don't-tell route, although it does provide a bit of context to the world state before it all went to hell, while also explaining where the series' main antagonists come from. Silicon Life are a race of cyborg creatures that serve as villains for the duration of the story, though we'll talk more about that later. Either way, they were created through unethical experiments involving cybernetic implants, usually against the subject's will. As we get to see in Noise, during one of said unethical experiments, shit hits the fan pretty severely, and the first silicon creature was born. While nobody looks at the camera and says the Silicon Life proliferated a pathogen that removed the net terminal gene from humans, that's what's implied, I think. Regardless, after the net terminal gene began to disappear, the city entered a state of lockdown, and the citywide antivirus, known as the Safeguard, was given the order to destroy all humans missing the net terminal gene. So when everyone lost the net terminal gene and nobody was able to tell the Safeguard to stop, the order functionally became exterminate all human life. With humanity on the run from the Safeguard and Silicon Life and control of the Netsphere locked away, the city was left to grow exponentially in any and all directions it could, completely unfettered by human supervision. Thousands of years later, the small pockets of human civilization that remain live like rats, tucked away within the city's walls, hunted endlessly by both the Safeguard and Silicon Life. Killy's goal is simple: find a human who possesses the net terminal gene, use them to access the Netsphere, and stop the ongoing apocalypse. Maybe on Earth, maybe in the future. Log 1. The Net's offspring. We open on Killy, accompanied by a small child as they make their way across a frighteningly narrow bridge between two parts of the city. Already we get to see one of these signature Nihei ultra-wide shots, in this case pulling the perspective out so far away while our subjects remain solitary and contrasted by the sprawling world around them feels very novel. Look, there's even a little manta ray guys flying around on the ceiling. Wow! But the whimsy is quickly interrupted by the appearance of a man, or what looks to be one, approaching from across the bridge. Killy, cautious of the stranger, tells the kid to climb into a nearby service hatch while he assesses the potential threat. The stranger acts friendly at first, striking up conversation. However, his demeanor quickly changes when Killy stops him from looking in the service hatch. And by his demeanor changing, I mean his face and arms and body swap into attack mode as he lunges towards Killy. Luckily though, Killy has 500 hours in Red Dead Online and quick draws the dude so fast he gets ripped in half, sending Killy flying backwards from the recoil. After Killy ensures the threat is neutralized, he pulls the child out from the hatch, and it's revealed that situations like this have happened before when the child says, "Killy, he wanted my cells too, didn't he?" Sometime later, a pair of threatening-looking individuals arrive on the scene, and we get our first look at the Silicon Life I mentioned before. They interrogate the corpse of the man who, as it's revealed through their interaction, was tracking Killy and the child he's escorting. After the Silicon duo confirms that the child carries genotypes from before the infection, they leave, ignoring the man's plea to save a backup of his consciousness and unceremoniously kick him off the bridge. Following their encounter, Killy and the child continue along their path, now finding themselves in some sort of claustrophobic mechanical corridor. Cautiously, Killy brings them to a halt and draws his weapon on some unseen noise, ready to fire, when suddenly the kid is harpooned through the leg and dragged towards the ceiling by one of the Silicon creatures we saw before. Behind him, the other half of the duo shoots at Killy, who returns fire, missing a shot and causing the hallway they're in to fill with water. Soon the Silicon Life manage to disarm Killy and steal his gun, but are seemingly unfamiliar with the gravitational beam emitter and its consequences and fire it haphazardly, causing a major structural collapse that knocks the floor out from underneath Killy. He falls into a now flooding pit. Desperate to catch up with the Silicon Life, Killy takes a brief look around and manages to locate an abandoned vehicle nearby. How it ended up here and why is unknown, although Killy is seemingly unfazed by the dead pilot, so finding something like this probably isn't too uncommon in this world. We cut back to the Silicon Life, carrying the child in some sort of egg sack as they ascend a giant stone staircase, something that feels weirdly out of place in the very futuristic setting that this chapter has, up until now, adhered to. We also get a side profile of the Silicon Life as they walk, and in the background there's a shanty structure made of loose sheet metal and piping, with people huddled around a fireplace like they're in fucking Blight Town or something. For whatever reason, the Silicon Life ignore them though and continue upwards, but their travels are quickly halted by Killy arriving in his brand new Ava unit, which he uses to quickly gain the upper hand on the Silicon Life and retrieve his gravitational beam emitter, ending the fight. But by the time he reaches the kid and frees him from the cocoon, it's too late. He's already dead. End log 1. This is, in my humble opinion, one of the best introductions to a manga that's ever been published. It gets everything right, down to the last, minute detail, starting with moments of serenity focused on the environment and artwork, contrasted by the suspense of the road man appearing and the Silicon Life closing in on Killy and the child he's trying to protect. And then it erupts violently into prolonged action scenes where our protagonist, while competent, is completely unprepared and fails in what was seemingly his only goal. But even once Killy atones for his shortcomings, taking out his assailants and getting the kid back, it was all for nothing. He's already dead. Killy is visibly distraught, which for a very cool, badass sci-fi drifter is basically a full-blown mental breakdown, showing that the cruel, violent world he lives in takes a toll on even him. It's just... it's so fucking good, I can't. Having read the whole story multiple times, it's truly remarkable how well Nihei keeps up the quality, especially since it took him 6 whole years to finish it. You would suspect there to be a little bit of dragging here and there, maybe some tonal inconsistencies or shifts in theme. You know, happens to the best of us, but no. It's perfect. And Blom doesn't overstay its welcome either, coming in at only 65 chapters. A complete read-through can be done in an afternoon, maybe 2 if you want to cover all the extracurriculars. So just a heads up, I'm going to cover lots of the big moments and ideas in the story going forward, and I would hate to spoil that for anyone. So seriously, if you have even the slightest bit of interest in Blom, pause the video, go experience it for yourself, and then come back another time. Plus, there's like a million free scans of it online, so there's basically no excuse. Log 2. Memories of Earth. Also, I promise this isn't a recap video, I'm just summarizing the most important bits so you have some context for the other stuff I talk about. Anyways, Log 2. Memories of Earth. Takes place directly after Log 1. Who would have thunk? Killy is resting on an outcropping while the body of the child from the previous chapter sits beside him, and we see an elevator disturb some little grubby dudes as it shoots down to the platform Killy is resting on. Shortly thereafter, a woman with wacky cybernetic noodle arms steps out of the elevator alongside her dog. The unnamed woman uses a biopod scanner thingy to check the kid's DNA, which apparently contains no irregularities, a fact she discloses in a phone call, presumably with whoever sent her down here. As she finishes with her checks, the woman takes a seat on the floor next to Killy. Above the 3000 stratum, I found a residential sector with working systems. Killy turns to her, surprised. She continues, I don't know if there are any humans, but I want you to go look. In response, Killy pulls out a hardcover book he found and begins reading from it. The cold, silent land was lightening as the human figure walked up to the ridge. What's land? Killy asks, earnestly. By the way, that's a real passage from James Tiptree Jr.'s The Snows Are Melted, The Snows Are Gone, a story about an armless girl and her wolf companion. What's that? The woman interjects, ignoring his question. A hard copy? This is very old, she comments. May I have this? Before Killy can reply, the woman's dog glances upward. It's getting dark, she says, returning to her elevator, holding the door open for Killy. You should be able to get as far as the flats above. The woman lingers, expecting Killy to join her. He remains seated, though, staring solemnly into the chasm in front of him. Taking his silence as a no, the woman allows the elevator doors to close, and she descends. End of Vlog 2. From here, we begin the first of the many wandering sequences that Blom is so well known for. These long periods of the story where Killy is on the way. This is a part of the story that most authors and directors usually prefer to skip over. Like, how many movies or games or books can you think of where the characters have to go from point A to B, and we just skip that chunk in between? I can think of, like, a bajillion of them. This is, of course, easily justifiable and is often in service of maintaining pacing and suspense. Like, imagine No Country for Old Men, but we got a real-time POV as Anton tracks down Llewellyn, and he sits alone with a shotgun in his motel room. Now, that might be the funniest idea I've ever thought of, but I don't think that's what the Coen brothers were going for. Blom is very much about that space in between action, the journey more so than the destination. So logically, it puts great effort in highlighting the liminal spaces present in its world. Where a lesser author would have the story jump straight to Killy arriving at his next destination, Nihei allows us to revel in the travel time, and even dots it with cool fucking action sequences in between. You know, just as a little treat for us. All of this does a lot to help us empathize with Killy despite his normally rock-like expressiveness, and holy shit, it works. When Killy gets into fights with some safeguard bots, or when a band of the Silicon lifeforms inevitably track him down and stall his progress, you care. You care because you just walked across that massive bridge. You trudged up that giant staircase just as Killy did. Forcing you to travel with Killy bestows this innate understanding of just how long travel takes in this world. And when you're operating on borrowed time, any prolonged conflict could be the death of you, or all of the human race in this instance. It's in these wandering sequences too where we get to see how the city operates in all of its meticulous glory. World builders often get swept up in the spectacle of the world they're trying to make, and as a result, frequently skip out on a lot of those ground level details. Details which aren't as exciting per se, but allow the world to feel real and lived in. And Nihei does all of it with basically no dialogue. We're never told that humans are dying out, we see it. We see people struggling to survive and the few livable gaps in the functionally infinite monolith around them. We see them hiding from Safeguard Antivirus and Silicon Life hunting them. And perhaps most importantly, we see the consequences of failing to do so. This, combined with the immense diversity of spaces and gadgets and transports we get to see over the course of the story, it's all so well thought out. So well thought out that you stop questioning the absurdity of it eventually. Like, oh, of course, the elevator that takes 800 hours. A classic. Insane stuff like that just makes sense in the context we're given. Log 8, the capital. Killy reaches Cluster Town, a settlement of very tall humans run by the Bioelectric Corporation, a group which, similarly to Killy, is trying to find a way to take back control of the Netsphere. Through unethical genetic engineering experiments. Allegedly! But for all intents and purposes, Cluster Town and Bioelectric are just another one of these small pockets of humanity living and hiding from a hostile outside world. Like, sure, they have a functioning organ trade. I mean, economy with plenty of slaves, workers, and they like to pretend that they're better than all the other human settlements, but At the end of the day, everyone in Cluster Town is still subservient to the president, a formerly human cybernetically enhanced intelligence being propped up by the bioelectric brand Safeguard robots that he uses to keep everyone in line. Doesn't sound familiar at all. Anyways, it's while trying to access Cluster Town's genetic records and subsequently failing that Killy meets the series' deuteragonist, Sibo. Sibo was formerly the head scientist of bioelectric back when the president, or one of his many clones, was still relatively human-shaped. Following a failed experiment in creating artificial net terminal genes, Sibo was imprisoned, and over time her natural body decayed, leaving only her cybernetic backups. Sibo primarily serves as a narrative foil to our main protagonist. So unlike the very serious, quiet, and overall unwelcoming Killy, Sibo is comparatively lighthearted, conversational, and sheltered from the horrors of the city, though she can still hold her own in a fight. Sibo will remain a main character all the way to the finale, which is especially surprising given that most characters can't go more than a chapter without succumbing to the city. Upon finding her all mummified and chained up, Killy agrees to free Sibo under the condition that she lets him access Bioelectric's genetic records. Sibo, of course, immediately agrees, and Killy plugs her into the facility's central computer system, which she uses to build herself a new body, that she, alongside Killy, used to wipe out a bunch of bioelectric safeguards, and take out the president in the process. When in Rome, I guess. Once they get rid of the president, Sibo admits to Killy that there were never any genetic records to begin with, and after escaping Cluster Town and patching up their wounds, Sibo politely informs Killy that she's going with him to find the net terminal genes. Killy is clearly a little bit miffed about Sibo's trickery, but because he's just like me for real and can't say no to attractive women, they begin the journey upwards together to the next lair. On said journey upwards, Killy and Sibo are contacted by the Administration, yet another faction present in the fight for the city's future. The Administration is a group of people, Netsphere AI, no, I don't know what they are. The point is, though, they're on Killy's side. The administrator agent reveals that the city has grown to the point where they can't even grasp how large it's become, and they seek to help humanity by stopping the chaos. But to do so, they need that pesky little net terminal gene. Though, as luck would have it, the administration believes the humans that might carry it are somewhere in the city, and all Killy and Sibo have to do is find them. And log 9. After this bit of honestly pretty underwhelming encouragement, the series falls into the rhythm it keeps up until the end of the run. Killy and Sibo roll up looking for the net terminal gene, things go wrong, causing Safeguard or Silicon Life to show up, then they duke it out. Killy and Sibo nearly die. Afterwards, they move along to the next area of interest. Ordinarily, I think a story so formulaic would get boring after a while, but Nihei does a wonderful job of keeping it fresh, usually by providing some new man-made horror in almost every chapter. By far, the best example of this happens about halfway through the story in Log 36, Beautiful Life. Having just escaped their most recent near-death experience, Killy and Sibo are on the road again, this time in search of a way to scan a DNA sample they found in the last adventure, when they stumble upon something strange. Two naked women crouching in a hallway, who hurriedly crawl away into the darkness after spotting them. With a small chance of either one of them potentially carrying the net terminal gene, Killy and Sibo follow quickly after the streakers, hoping they might just lead them to another population center. Pursuing the women through some maintenance tunnels and pipes and such, they pop out into a room full of more naked women? Much like before, the women scatter into the surrounding tunnels. Sibo urges Killy to chase them further, but Killy's scans confirmed that none of the women were net terminal gene carriers. In fact, they all had the exact same genetic signature. Killy says he's seen other places like this, whatever that means. And as he walks off to find a way forward, suddenly Sibo hears crying in the distance and decides to investigate, only to find a woman barely clinging to consciousness, hooked up to a life support system, along with another apparatus that continuously pumps out babies, clones, using her DNA. It's a device to keep producing clones perpetually, Sibo says. Who would make something like this? Just then, Killy catches up to her and destroys the machine, putting the woman out of her probably centuries-long suffering in the process. The remaining clones watch on, expressionless, as the pair leave this particular nightmare behind. End log 36. Beautiful Life is easily one of my favorite chapters in the whole series, and I love how we get a little window into the characters' psyches through their reactions. Sibo is mortified, but seemingly a little bit intrigued by the situation, whereas Killy is just disgusted and kind of numb to it all, which is ironic, I think, given that Beautiful Life holds a mirror up to our protagonists in a way that makes both us and the characters feel weird. While neither of them are hooked up to the fucking torture nexus or whatever, both of them have been alive for so long. Centuries, millennia of enduring this hell humanity has found itself in, primarily due to their cybernetic implants. After a while, I think you start wondering if these characters are even human anymore. Like, transhumanism and loss of humanity has always been a core aspect of cyberpunk media, but Blom takes it to the next level, man. After receiving treatment for a wee bit of sci-fi nerve damage virus he picked up a couple chapters back, Killy's internal systems are completely reset, and he gains the ability to scan people topically for signs of the net terminal gene, an ability that he seemingly had no clue he possessed. Then a little later in that same arc, Killy faces off against a rogue safeguard implement named Sonicon, the one that gave Killy the aforementioned sci-fi nerve damage. And Sonicon reveals that Killy himself is also a safeguard of some kind. Sibo later confirms this while taking a brief stint in the hyperspace between reality and the netsphere, when she asks the netsphere proxy accompanying her if Killy really is a safeguard, to which the proxy explains that he is, in fact, a ancient and secret implement of the system that predates the safeguard entirely. This goes a long way in explaining why Killy has managed to survive for so long, even by the city's standards. He's shown taking frequent and severe damage across his many battles with both Safeguard and Silicon Life that he just magically recovers from, much quicker than any factory-issue human I've ever seen, might I add. This also explains how Killy got his gravitational beam emitter, which is apparently the standard weapon type given to whatever class of safeguard Killy qualifies as. But that still doesn't answer the question. How human is Killy? Well, in Blom and So On, one of the aforementioned extracurriculars, it's said that Killy's amnesia is just a side effect of how long he's been alive. And at one point in the past, he was fully human, though he's undergone intensive cybernetic enhancement. So, you know, the line is a little bit blurry. You know, he's a mix it around, he's a little bit of this, he's a little bit of that, you know. In addition to witnessing the failed Netsphere experiments at Bioelectric, as well as some alternate timeline shenanigans, Sibo also endures her own barrage of fucked up sci-fi horror, usually of the Geigerish variety, having to swap bodies multiple times, or having her body taken over / transformed against her will, just like that one time she turned into a butterfly. This is always depicted as an uncomfortable process at the least, and on more than a couple occasions an outright painful one. Probably the most notable iteration of this theme occurs close to the end of the series in Log 48, Urge. Following a failed assassination attempt on some particularly rowdy Silicon Life operators threatening to access the Netsphere, Sibo gets some advanced safeguard data uploaded into her system. But before anyone can do or say anything, she morphs into this really fucking scary looking safeguard hybrid monster that honestly, it scares the hell out of me. I don't know why. Either against her will or in some sort of confused state, the new safeguard Sibo attacks Killy. In the fight that ensues, the two end up destroying the entire megastructure layer around them, and while he sustains extensive injuries in the process, Killy manages to save himself just in the nick of time and narrowly avoids death, though his body enters a prolonged stasis to recover. End of Log 48. During this time, Killy dreams of the woman with the dog we saw all the way back in Log 2, as well as a scene of 3 people standing along an edifice overlooking the city. What these visions mean and who exactly these people are is never told to us in either Blom or any of the extracurricular manga Nihei made, so just make up whatever feels right to you. If you ask me, I'd say that these are some of the other pre-safeguard individuals tasked with tracking down the net terminal gene, people who Killy barely remembers now after the thousands of years he's been wandering the city. Killy finishes healing after 127,460 hours, 58 minutes, and 21 seconds, which is a really long time. Now armed with a much cooler fit and an upgraded gravitational beam emitter that he had to excavate out of some solidified magma, he wanders off in search of Sibo, using the data from some nearby builder robots who saw her to begin tracking her down. The last leg of the story follows Killy as he looks for Sibo, and honestly, it's one of the strangest, loneliest, and most hopeful endings I've ever seen in a piece of media. Up until this point, Killy has remained pretty steadfast in his resolve to track down the net terminal gene. And maybe I'm just projecting my own feelings onto him, but after he loses Sibo, Killy feels tired. He has a shorter temper, opens fire more, and talks even less than he already did. And again, I have no real proof of this, but he just looks angrier. I don't know. I'm probably just imagining things. Okay, maybe his eyes just got farther apart. Now alone, Killy does just about the only thing he can do. He wanders, and wanders, and wanders, and wanders. After a good 40 chapters with Sibo as his partner, suddenly being alone again makes the city feel even larger and more isolated than before. How many times has this happened, do you think? How many people do you think Killy lost to the hellscape around him? Across thousands of years lived and miles walked, the city has taken his body, his memory, so it stands to reason it's taken the people he's loved from him as well. That kind of trauma changes people. It makes you wonder if Killy has always been this stoic, cold, manly archetype that we see him as, or if this is something that he turned into over time. Killy's loneliness is short-lived, however, when he stumbles across a human consciousness contained within a little necklace-like personality backup device hung around the neck of a corpse. The consciousness, named Mori, asks Killy, much like Sibo did, to help her by taking the necklace with him. Killy reluctantly agrees before continuing forward. Mori is a really interesting character, mostly because she only comes in at what is practically the end of the series, and we also just know literally nothing about her. Mori isn't even her actual name, just the brand label on the necklace device she's trapped in. Mori helps Killy by revealing some Dark Souls-type illusory walls for him, guiding him through some of the more confusing upper layers, and provides light commentary in place of Sibo. She's also a fucking menace, and on one occasion tries to stick her robot cock in Killy's face to hijack his body. Killy is quick with it though, and dodges the probe, and for some reason just keeps her around his neck while they continue forward. Log 57, The Observer, is another one of my favorite chapters. Following Mori's attempted bodyjacking, Killy continues his march up the 3,000-kilometer staircase, and upon reaching the top, opens a door to... nothing. That's weird, huh? Very insightful commentary, Mori. Nearby, a solitary Silicon Life creature stands, apparently surprised by Killy and Mori's presence.
I've been observing here for a long while, but this is the first time I've met a biological entity,
it says. The Silicon Life informs Killy and Mori that the room they're currently standing in is about 143,000 kilometers in diameter, and warns them that the path forward is blocked by safeguards. Killy, of course, repays his kindness by fucking obliterating him. Hey, why did you do that? Mori reprimands. That was a Silicon Life, Killy states matter-of-factly before walking off again. End log 57. Killy might be our protagonist, but to call him a good person is a bit of a stretch. He's often cruel, uncaring, and seemingly finds immense satisfaction in killing off any Silicon Life he can find. Like early on, he blows up this nursery thing and then brags about it to some Silicon Life he ends up fighting later, which is insane. Even when they claim to be friendly or show no real signs of aggression, like the Observer, Killy shoots on sight. His bloodlust is only called further into question when it's revealed that the Silicon Life we see throughout the series, while violent, are only like that in an attempt to save themselves from extinction. If a human with the net terminal gene ends up getting access to the net sphere, they will almost certainly use that newfound control to turn the safeguards against the Silicon Life. So as a result, they'll be hunted down and wiped off the face of the Earth. In a situation where you have two teams pitted against each other, a game where one's survival spells imminent demise for the other, I personally find it hard to choose sides. Still, can you really blame Killy? He has endured so much pain at the hands of the Silicon Life, including but not limited to watching his companion get infected with an evil torture virus that transformed her into an Evangelion monster. So, honestly, I would probably shoot on sight too. Meanwhile, somewhere else in the city, Sibo copes with the damage she received in her fight with Killy. Reduced to a weak, passive version of her safeguard form, she shambles around the city, assisted by a builder robot who shows signs of sentience? Which, after all the Silicon Life stuff, I don't even want to get into. Eventually, though, Sibo runs into a new and improved Sonicon. Yes, that Sonicon, the very same one. She gives Sibo a quick look over, clearly befuddled by her infantile state, though she asserts that Sibo's core, this round thing in her pelvis, will be very important when she learns how to use it. We don't get very much context as to how exactly Sonicon came back, given that Sibo body swapped into her way back in log 20, presumably killing her, though it looks like that could have just uploaded her consciousness somewhere else. Maybe she's like Killy, another ancient safeguard measure that got corrupted over time before receiving a hard reset. We find out that Sonicon was sent by the administration to find Sibo and protect her, presumably because of the important orb she's carrying with her, but before we can learn exact details, they're attacked by heavily armored Silicon Life, and Sonicon dies trying to prevent them from capturing Sibo. Shortly thereafter, Sonicon awakens in the Netsphere, where an administration proxy gives her a quick debriefing and explains that while Sonicon failed, they have a contingency put in place. However, Sonicon begs to be given another chance to rescue Sibo, and even after being informed that going back would delete her backups from the Netsphere, thus making any deaths she suffers permanent, Sonicon chooses to return, determined to see her mission through. The administration then contacts Killy, using Mori as a sort of proxy, and gives him Sibo's coordinates while informing him of her capture, and so he sets off to reach her before it's too late. The final showdown to follow really is a masterclass in how to do an action manga, with tons of insane shit happening across the board and both sides suffering critical damage. It's grand, it's cyberpunk, it's The Silicon Lifeguarding Sibo are particularly tough, and there's just so many of them compared to the numbers we've seen before. It stands to reason that in a world that's so big, the resources to form such a massively overwhelming force would exist, but whenever we get to see it, you can't help but be a little awestruck by the sheer spectacle of it all. Sonicon arrives, taking over a Silicon Knight to even the odds a little bit, and pulls off rescuing Sibo at the cost of her leg. And after flying away from the fighting, the pair rest on a bit of destroyed megastructure. Sonicon places her hand gently on Sibo's orb belly thing. Sibo, our child is safe. However, the two are hardly able to recuperate before what the Log 63 subtitle refers to as a high-level exterminator appears behind them, no doubt attracted by the carnage. The high-level exterminator traps Sonicon and Sibo in a blank white room, pinning Sonicon to the wall as it approaches Sibo's near-lifeless body. And just when it looks like the exterminator is going to kill Sonicon and destroy Sibo's core, Killy arrives, blowing a hole through the wall and interrupting the fight, allowing Sonicon a free hand to catch the exterminator's attention so Killy can unleash one final, fully powered, gravitational beam emitter. Coming to, with one less arm than he had before, Killy finds himself in an ash-covered wasteland. Nearby, a dying Sonicon uses her final breath to task Killy with taking the orb somewhere safe, somewhere free from the corruption of the city. Though Killy doesn't really understand why she asks this of him or what the sphere even is, Sonicon passes away before she can give him a real answer. Now alone, Killy gets one final look at Sibo's charred body as it disintegrates into the wind. End log 63. What? Nihei must be a horse the way he's intimidating this awesome lesbian couple. Jesus Christ! And by intimidating, I mean fucking killing them. Okay. So, I don't know how this whole Sibo being pregnant thing actually works. I understand that at some point, Sibo and Sonicon's DNA got mixed together, probably during one of the many body swaps. But what I don't get is how Sibo getting infected with the safeguard data turned her pregnant with the orb baby. Now, the thing I didn't get my first time around the Blom carousel, and I'm like 90% sure is never stated outright, this orb, the child growing inside it, has the net terminal gene. I'll say this is very on brand for Nihei though, a sudden strange reveal that leaves everyone asking questions, and then he kills off the only characters who could possibly provide us an answer. And now Killy finally has this thing he's been tracking down for millennia and he doesn't even realize it. That's all I have to say about that. Moving on. Log 64, recovered personality. A woman in a cloak awakens in a graveyard overgrown with vines. Curiously, she wanders, searching for any signs of life. She passes through windswept fields and sunken pathways littered with graves, and eventually reaches a town dangling precariously over an eroding cliff face. All the while, the moon hangs low in the sky. She enters the town, finding its architecture strange and fairy tale-like, with buildings warping and bending into each other. There are people here, though they sleep so deeply not even pinching their noses shut wakes them up. The woman, confused, decides to sit on a nearby bench, maybe to wait or gather her thoughts, when a strange, homunculus-like creature appears. "Hello," she greets it. "Everyone's asleep, so I thought I'd wait here until morning." "Morning will never come. No one will wake," the creature says. "They can't die, so they are in perpetual slumber." "Where am I? What should I do?" she asks, frightened. "I don't know. I'm just an AI toy." "Are you crying?" the toy asks. "Come with me. I'll take you to someone who isn't asleep." And so they leave, across dangerous landscapes and narrow valleys, and arrive at a great dune, where a giant eldritch creature lies sunken into the sand.
Have you recently come to this territory?
The strange being asks. "I don't really know myself," she answers.
Did the administration explain anything to you?
Once again, the woman denies knowing anything.
You see, this territory is a temporary storage for personalities with corrupted memory or missing bodies. But for a very long time now, it's been abandoned, and even I've lost track of how long I've been here.
The woman questions the nature of this place's abandonment.
Since the disaster, all the Netsphere has been malfunctioning, not just this territory. Do you remember the disaster?
"No," the woman says.
Do you remember anything about who you were or where you were before you came here?
"I'm not sure whether this is something I actually experienced or if I only dreamed it. I was on a quest with someone. He was searching for something that would save the city. It seemed like he'd been on that quest for a long time, before I even met him."
What was that place like?
"Not like this place at all. There were buildings that went on, and we hardly ever came across any other people."
Do you know what your companion was searching for?
"I can't quite remember, but he had a sphere. An embryo made from the genes of 2 women was preserved inside of it. In a place with no danger of infection, it would start to grow on its own. I think he was going to take the sphere there. But that place was beyond the final megastructure at the city's limits. The administration said that the journey there would be even longer and more difficult."
The administration said that.
"Yes. A representative entity from the administration recovered me from an emergency save package. It had been overwritten with files from different people, but some fragments of me, the rightful owner, just barely remained, and I was recreated from those fragments," Mori says. "It was just for a moment at the end, but I was able to see him from the perspective of the representative entity. But I don't know how much time has passed since then. Do you think he's still out there now, continuing his quest?"
I'm sorry. I can't answer that either. Here, now, there's no way of knowing what happens in base reality. But if he manages to transport that sphere safely, if he accomplishes his goal, then we'll probably know of it here too. For now, there's nothing we can do but wait.
End log 63. How's everyone doing? Everybody doing all right? Log 64 being the penultimate entry in the series naturally carries a lot of weight on its shoulders, and since we're approaching the end of the story, that, if you were following it in real time, has taken 6 years to conclude, that's a long time to build expectations. But by now I think people had probably caught on to Nihei's habit of subverting those whenever possible. Still, having your second to last chapter so prominently feature a character that we don't even recognize at first in a setting we're unfamiliar with, and having it be one of the rare dialogue-heavy entries in the series? That's brave. And even better than brave, it works. Because even with the change in characters and setting and storytelling format, it sticks to the theme, holding out hope against all odds, knowing that one day things will get better, even when it seems impossible. Final log. A mission. Back in the city, Killy continues to fight for his life against the silicon lifeforms that, despite the presumably tremendous amount of time that has passed, continue to hunt him. Something about him blowing up babies, I don't know. Killy is visibly worn, tired, even missing his left leg, replaced with a crude prosthetic. In a way, he's begun resembling the city around him, decrepit, falling apart. He walks across pipeways between buildings while a heavy rain descends around him, and eventually stumbles into a sewer or other form of drainage system. The tunnels prove to have been a bad choice, however, and rounding a corner, Killy is shot through the head by his pursuer, though he manages to fire off another round and kills the silicon life before collapsing. Slumped against the wall, he sits there, bleeding from the gaping hole in his skull as the rain outside slowly fills the tunnel. The water rises higher and higher as Killy gets swept away by the current. Through aqueducts and tubes, his body floats before reaching somewhere new. Darkness. A sandy ocean floor. Killy is delivered towards the surface of a shallow blue sea. As his body floats to the surface, the sphere, having finally reached somewhere free from the infection of the megastructure, emerges. He watches as it rises on its own, pulsating with a deep red glow, a beautiful sight contrasted with the starry night above. He finally made it. Static. But then, we see Killy holding out the gravitational beam emitter. A child in a respirator huddles behind him, shielding his body from the city's tainted air. That same stoic face we've come to love aims ahead, sturdy, determined, as the story ends with a... So, what do you think? In case the length of this video didn't tell you already, I think Blom is really cool. It's the perfect blend of sci-fi horror, environmental storytelling, and just a little bit of hope? Aww. Shut up! Despite its cold, cyberpunk exterior, Blom's characters and setting are surprisingly endearing. And before you know it, you're finishing the last chapter and crying over the fact that the main character, this boring guy doing his best Clint Eastwood impression the whole time, finally reached the end of his multiple 1,000-year-long journey. And you feel a little silly because of it. You stick with Killy as he undergoes these traumatic, brutal events that put the future of the world and humanity at stake. It's lonely, it's dark and depressing sometimes, but even when Killy reaches the lowest of the lows, he still finds meaning in pressing forward. What else is he gonna do? Lay down and let the world end around him? Because of that, I think Blom is, in a lot of ways, a modern sci-fi retelling of the myth of Sisyphus. But instead of Killy pushing a boulder up a hill forever, he's tasked with finding a needle in a world that represents the proverbial haystack. Even at the end of the story, Killy's journey isn't over. He still has a long way to go in saving humanity. Finding the net terminal gene was just step one, but hey, he's already come this far, right? That's cinema. It's just straight up awesome and cool, and if you don't think so, frankly, I don't fuck with you and we can't be friends. It's especially impressive when you realize how little Nihei actually tells you about what's going on. He thinks you'll figure it out yourself through context clues and plain old thinking it through. Trusting yourself enough to trust your audience is the mark of a truly skilled author/artist, and Nihei knocks it out of the park. And keep in mind, this is the first work he ever published. His willingness to let you take everything in on your own is what makes all of his work so worth exploring. It makes for a very active reading experience when you're always trying to figure out what the hell is going on. And even after 49 minutes of analysis and summary and discussion, I still left like half of the story out. Ha! Really pulled the wool over your eyes with that little maneuver, didn't I? Unless you're already a fan of the series, which is likely, seeing as you clicked on this video in the first place, and those guys are probably just upset about that, actually. Whoops. Anyways, I didn't even mention the Electrofishers or Toei Heavy Industries or Domachevsky and Eco or like half of the crazy awesome shit that happens in this manga because, and I cannot stress this enough, Blom is worth experiencing for yourself. So go, get out of here already, go read. After one last quick message. Hi! If you're seeing this, thank you for watching all the way until the end. As you can see, I got a little bit carried away with the writing, and what I intended to be a 9-page script quickly doubled into what is my longest video I've ever made. I learned a lot about my writing style and how to stay motivated in the process, and I'm planning on making more of these videos soon, hopefully about 2 a month once I get going. Though they'll hopefully be much shorter than this one, mostly for my sake. It takes a lot of work to put these things together, and aside from normal life, I got a lot of fun stuff planned this year. Fun stuff I can turn into content. But fun stuff still takes time. Nonetheless, I appreciate your support more than you could ever know, and you can look forward to at least a couple more cool fucking videos out of me before I take off for a bit in March. So one last time, thank you, and I'll see you when I see you. Bye! Press the like and subscribe button, please, please, I'm begging you, please, God.